Okay, so I want you to think about something for a second. Picture your body not as, well, a body, but as this massive, bustling city. But instead of concrete and steel, it's built from tiny living units. We're talking trillions of them, each one working nonstop just to keep the whole city humming along. Today, we're going right to the source. We're going to explore the fundamental building block of this entire metropolis, the cell.
So, just how big are we talking? Get ready for this. You, yes you, are made of an estimated 30 trillion cells. That's a 3 with 13 zeros after it. I mean, it's an absolutely mind-boggling number. And every single one of those is its own little microscopic powerhouse, all working together in perfect harmony. And we're not talking about identical little bricks either. Oh no. The diversity is incredible. You've got muscle cells that contract. You've got nerve cells that fire off these tiny electrical signals. You've got blood cells that are basically little oxygen delivery trucks. They're all the specialized workers that make your body, well, your body. And the only way this whole metropolis works is if all 30 trillion of them can coordinate and, more importantly, survive. Which brings up a pretty big question, right? How does one single microscopic cell actually stay alive? I mean, it's got to eat, it's got to take out the trash, and it has to protect all its delicate internal machinery from the chaos of the outside world. It needs a border, a gateway, and a bouncer, all rolled into one. Okay, so first up, let's just take a moment to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of these 30 trillion parts that make you up. So let's meet the super elegant solution to this whole survival problem, the cell membrane. This thing is a smart border. It's a barrier that's incredibly picky about who and what gets in. It's basically the cell's ultimate bouncer. And the perfect way to describe it is as a fluid mosaic. Why? Because this thing isn't some rigid, static wall. It's way more like a sea, a flexible sea, where all the little protein bits can float and drift around like ships. It's a dynamic, constantly changing, and really intelligent boundary. And here's what that looks like up close. The main fabric of the thing, that's a double layer of what we call phospholipids. But the real action, that's happening with all the stuff that's embedded in it. See those big purple chunks? Those are proteins, and they act like specialized tunnels and doorways. And those little yellow bits, that's cholesterol. And it acts kind of like glue to make sure the membrane doesn't get too runny or too stiff. So how in the world does this barrier just form so perfectly? Well, it all comes down to a really simple love-hate relationship with water. The phospholipid molecules have these hydrophilic or water-loving heads, and they are perfectly happy to face the watery environment both inside and outside the cell. But their hydrophobic or water-fearing tails, they want to get away from water at all costs. So they automatically tuck themselves into the middle, forming this oily protective core. It's an amazing self-assembling marvel. So we've got our border. Now, how does stuff actually get across? Let's start with the easy way, what's known as passive transport. And that is all about just going with the flow. All right, this is the most important distinction we're going to make today. Passive transport is effortless. It requires zero energy from the cell. Things just naturally move from an area where there's a lot of them to an area where there's less of them. You know, like rolling downhill. Easy. But active transport, that is hard work. The cell actually has to spend its energy currency, a molecule called ATP, to force things to go where they don't naturally want to go. That's like pushing a giant boulder uphill. Now, for this easy, go-with-the-flow kind of transport, the cell has a few different methods in its toolkit. We're going to take a quick look at simple diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and the incredibly important process of osmosis. You know simple diffusion already, even if you don't know the name. It's just like dropping a sugar cube into your coffee. The sugar doesn't just stay in a clump, right? It naturally spreads out until it's evenly distributed everywhere. Well, certain tiny molecules, like oxygen and carbon dioxide, can do the exact same thing. They can just dissolve right through the membrane's oily core and slip inside. No special doorway needed. Osmosis is basically just the special name we give to the diffusion of water. That's it. So, if you've got an area with a lot of water and not a lot of other stuff, and you separate it from an area with less water but more other stuff, water is going to automatically move across that barrier to try and balance things out. It's a really simple concept, but it is profoundly important for every single cell in your body. And why is it so critical? Because for your cells, water balance is literally life or death.
If you put a red blood cell in a solution that's way too watery compared to its insides, water rushes in and the cell will literally burst. But if you put it in a solution that's way too salty, all the water rushes out and it shrivels up like a raisin. So yeah, getting osmosis right isn't just some neat trick, it's absolute survival.
Okay, but what if a cell needs to move something against the natural flow? What if it needs to push that boulder uphill? For that, it needs a completely different strategy. So welcome to active transport, the cell's exclusive energy-guzzling VIP system. Let's be super clear here. Active transport is the cell spending its energy money, ATP, to force molecules against the direction they'd normally go. It's pushing that boulder uphill so it can create a big stockpile at the top. Because, well, that pile of boulders at the top is crucial for powering all sorts of other cellular machines.
The classic example here is the sodium-potassium pump, and it works exactly like an energy-powered revolving door. Check this out. 3 sodium ions from inside the cell hop on. Then, boom, ATP provides a burst of energy which changes the pump's shape and kicks the sodium out. Now, that new shape is a perfect fit for 2 potassium ions on the outside. They hop on, the pump flips back to its original shape, and they're released inside. This constant cycle, 3 sodium out, 2 potassium in, is what creates the electrical charge your nerves use to fire. It's literally powering your thoughts at this very moment. Now, what about the really big stuff, like a whole bacterium or a big clump of nutrients? A tiny pump won't work for that, so the cell uses a process called endocytosis. Instead of a tiny door, the membrane itself actually wraps around the target and engulfs it. And there are 2 main types here. Phagocytosis, which literally means cell eating for solid particles, and pinocytosis, or cell drinking, for taking in little droplets of external fluid. And you can really see the difference here. On the left, that's a real white blood cell in action, literally swallowing up an old, worn-out red blood cell. That's cell eating. Then on the right, you can see how the membrane is pinching inwards, taking a little gulp of the fluid around it, just to sample whatever dissolved molecules might be floating by. That's cell drinking. So we've seen pumps and channels and cell eating and cell drinking, all this incredible microscopic detail. I think it's time to zoom back out and ask the most important question of all. Why does any of this tiny traffic, actually matter? It matters because this is life. The ability to control what comes in and what goes out, to build up power and then spend it, to protect the delicate order inside from the chaos outside. This constant, meticulously controlled traffic happening across 30 trillion borders at once, it isn't just a part of life, it is life. Which leaves us with this final thought. Every single one of your cells is an expert bouncer, a master of traffic control. So what happens to the entire city when just one of those 30 trillion bouncers fails at its job and starts letting the wrong things through?